Good afternoon, and thank you very much for allowing the time to join us today. My name is Charles Scott. Welcome to this month's Civil Designer Software Open Classroom webinar. If you're new to our webinar series, please visit our website, www.civildesigner.com. Go to the Services pull-down menu and click on the Webinars link to access a library of our past webinars. Or under the same Services pull-down menu, click on the FAQ video link to access our library of 500 searchable short videos created from this series by typing your topic of interest in the search bar. And finally, while here, please visit our BIM page, where we list the many ways Civil Designer proficiently contributes to any BIM workflow process, which includes packages like Allplan, BIM Vision, Bentley, and Revit, via a standard 3D DWG, or a 3D DWG using a shared reference point, or a dynamically linked Civil Designer model in Revit, and finally via a range of various IFC file types created in Civil Designer and exported to Allplan, Bentley, and Revit, among many others. Back to today's webinar, where I'm going to shortly be joined by Christopher Schmidt for a potable water and stormwater session, using the latest version of Civil Designer, version 8.5 Build 7. During Chris's presentation today, please feel free to use the text chat service on your GoToWebinar app or webpage to ask us any questions you may have during his time today. Chris, it's been great working with you again. Please take it away.
Today we're going to be looking at a number of items. We'll be covering importing or converting of as-built data into a stormwater network. We'll also be covering and looking at water with regards to the routes and the air and scour valves along those routes. We'll then look at creating automatic house connections and the placement thereof. We'll then look at hydrants, setting up the hydrants and looking at their placements. We'll then be looking at street taps, the default settings for them, and the placement. Thereafter, we'll be looking at node types. We'll be going into the 2D and 3D aspects of it, setting them up, assigning the types of nodes to each node type. We'll also be looking at auto-sizing manholes and aligning the catch pit inlets to the road. So firstly, we're going to be looking at converting our CAD entities into a stormwater model. This particular application is for as-built data. You can use the convert drawing entities for converting a new stormwater or pipe network into a model. In those cases, you would only need a CAD layer for the storm links and a CAD circle for the outfall for where the water is going to flow. So you can set that up and convert it. In this application, it's a slightly bit more complicated because we would like to convert as-built information into a stormwater model, so we require more information to create this model. Here you can see, as we've already spoken about, the stormwater link sitting in its own CAD layer, and we've got the stormwater diameter sitting in their own layer. For the nodes, we don't need to have a CAD circle. You only need to have the pipes starting or ending at that location. And then we need to have a CAD layer for the names of the nodes and a CAD layer for the inverts of those nodes. And then, of course, as we spoke about previously, we just need a CAD circle for the outfall, and that needs to be in its own CAD layer as well. So before we start, we just need to go into our stormwater mode and go to File, Project Settings. I need to set up a stormwater database, so I'll call this Storm Model. It doesn't exist, so I'll create it and I'll press OK. There isn't a standards file, so it asks if I want to search for it or create a new one. So I'll select no to create a new one. Now that the database is set up for the stormwater, we can convert this as-built information into a stormwater model. The first step I would do is go to my settings, default settings. I would then look at the type of pipe that I will be creating, and the diameters need to be set to auto sizing. We can then look at the bedding classes that you would like to use, and the rest of the settings we'll keep as shown here for the as-built model. We're using a 50D concrete, so I'll go to OK, and I'll go to my link types. I'll make sure that I'm on 50D, and I'll look at the link type sizes and make sure that the CAD entities match up with those. If they don't, you will need to populate a new line in the code by inserting a new row and populating the data from the catalogs to match up with these. They don't have to be this. You can also have millimeters and a diameter sign in front. It will also still capture the text. As long as it is text and sitting in its own layer close to the center of the pipe, and the invert and names need to be close enough to the terminating point where the node will be placed for the node information. We have this network that we'll convert now. So in Stormwater mode, I'll go and say File, Import, Convert Drawing Entities. The software has searched all the names of the CAD entities, and it has gone and placed what it thinks is best suited. So under the outfalls, I've got my storm outfall, names is the storm names, the inverts is the storm invert levels, and we also have the links as well as the diameters. Earlier we spoke about converting new network. In that application, you would only need the outfall and the links to convert a new CAD model into a network and then start to do the design, where civil designer or yourself would find the slopes and the pipe sizes. But in this application, where it is an as-built, we do need more information to generate an as-built model. I can then press OK, and you can see it has modeled it. Before we go and look at those settings, I just want to change the display settings for the nodes. You can see I've preset up the names and the inverts. You can get that by right-clicking. And I chose a color just to stand out differently from what the text is, the CAD text. And for the links, I have set up the size as well, chosen a color to stand out differently to the color of the CAD text. We can then press OK, and we can then zoom in, and you can then see and match up that the name of this node matches the CAD as well as the invert levels. You can see the diameters are matching, so I'm happy that it has actually modeled this network. Just as a side note, if you are bringing in GIS information, please go and have a look at Civil Designer's website. You can then go to Services and have a look at our frequently asked questions. If you type in GIS or shape, you will come across the videos on how to convert GIS information into the CAD that you saw in this video. Now that the model has been set up, I can go and right click over here and turn off all the CAD information that we had set up. Can probably set that and switch all of these off, and then we'll be left with the Stormwater model, which you can now set up in your display settings to display the colors that you would like to use for this model. You can also choose to have a box around the text. We can choose to place the text on the other side, and we can put a box around that text as well. So we can place it like that. We can also move some of the text that we would like to place. Great. I would like to then produce a table for this, so we can then go and say Analyze Network. We can then skip this part and go through to renumbering branches. We want to recalculate the link lengths and from coordinates, and We don't need to worry about the keeping previously calculated link levels. This is more for the when a civil designer has calculated those levels. These aren't calculated levels. These are set by your inputs as fixed sizing of the pipes and the fixed invert levels of the manholes. One thing that we do come across at this stage, a lot of our clients, is when they're modeling existing networks, they do get error messages about negative flows. That is something that you will need to go, and it means that the survey wasn't surveyed correctly. It's more than likely that, because most of the time the pipes are laid downhill. So we will flag any errors in the network for you. Once the analysis is complete, we can then go to plot generate. We can choose the plan sheet file. We can plot it to any paper size. I'm going to choose to also plot it to the layouts. You can then press next. And if you've got anything pre-populated here, we can say redefine all. And then we can then go and choose. I'm going to have it sitting over here so that I can still have space for the table. And then we can say, do I want to adjust the rotation? I'm going to say no. Right click quit. And now it's ready. I can say I'd like to have some grids every 100. I can have crosses. I would like to have the storm list. I'll cancel this. And there it'll plot out the list. So we can select this, and then in CAD mode I can go and say modify move, and I'll place it in a better location. It'll still be dynamically linked to the model. Here you'll see all the position information and the types of pipe being used for the network are placed into the table. And it is ready to be issued to the client. The next thing I'd like to look at is to do with defining a route in a pipe network and then assigning air and scour valves along that route. So I'm going to open up a data set that I've got. Here you can see we've got a road alignment. If I go and to the properties, you'll see it's a road entity. I'm going to choose to use that road entity to define my pipe route, just as a quick way of getting the route out, and then we can just edit that route. So I'll have that road being selected so that I know it's the active road, and then I'll go to alignment, horizontal, track generation, and I will generate a track 10 meters on the left-hand side of it, sorry, on the right-hand side of it, and we can send that to a layer called CAD water pipe. And there you can see it's now generated this pipe route along here, and we can just go check along the top where I'd like it to cross over into the other side of the road. Here you can see it's running on this side, which is actually fine. You can just turn on your triangles to make sure that it's all inside the road, and I will then change that to a polyline. So let's go to the start of the road. You can see that it is sitting in the layer water pipe, so I just want to make that the current layer so that when I convert it to a polyline it stays within that layer. So I'm going to go to into CAD mode, and I'll go to tools, line to polyline, select this line, and I don't want to retain it. I'd like to delete the lines after converting it to a polyline. So I'll say yes. Now we can have a look at this. We have got lines and arcs along the route. Now you can't have a curved pipe, there's no such thing. We are going to make this into segmented pipe, and then the water mode will calculate the bends for us, what bends will be used there. We're going to change this to a 3D polyline, so I'm going to go, with it still selected, I'm going to go to lightweight polyline to 3D polyline. Now you can see we've got segmented pipes along the route, and that will then be converted into water pipes with bends. Okay, so I've got it selected and it's sitting in that layer. So I'm going to go to water mode. I'll then go to File, Project Settings. I'll select to start a water project, and we can call this water model. And I'll say OK, and yes. Before I convert this 3D polyline into a water network, I would like to just check out the default settings. I'm going to go to Settings, Pipe Defaults, and here you can set up what kind of pipe and the cover level, the depth cover level that you're going to be having the pipe under the ground. So let's choose a 350 and we'll choose a class 12 pipe. Internal and outside diameters are linked to the pipe from its catalog. We'll choose a cover of 1200 millimeters, and the rest we can keep. We can use a flexible bedding. The apply to all is if the pipes already exist and you want to change the already existing pipes. So we'll press OK. Now with that set up, I can convert these CAD lines and it will know what type of pipes and the depth it must convert these pipes to. So I'll go File, Import, Convert Drawing Entities. Yeah, it's picked up that layer already because we've called it water pipes, and so we don't have to select it. The valves we're not going to select. This is not an as-built that we're modeling now. We are modeling a new network, so we don't need to select any of these. We're going to get our diameters and our elevations from the default settings that we've just set up. The cover level will then work out the elevations for us by going depth plus the width of the pipe. The diameters we set up in the table earlier, the default settings as well. So we can then hide the layers when we convert it. Here you can see one pipe and two nodes have been created. You can see you've got your pipe with it's a water pipe now. You'll also see if you go to your bends and junctions, you'll see all your bends along that pipe have been catalogued with an X and Y coordinate, as well as the different types of bends that are taking place in the pipe. Now that we've got our pipe in, we can now define a route. So I'll go through to, in water mode, to graphical, define pipe route. I'll select the first node. It'll then ask for the end node, so I'll go through to the end. And then it will ask for via points. This is one route, so there isn't a via point as in the case of reticulation. So I'll right click and accept, and then we'll just call this bulk route 1. You can see now it has got its route, so I'm going to press escape. It's got changes along the route. And if you go to your display settings and you go to your pipe routes, you can set up other information that you would like to show along that route. Close that. With the route set up, we can go to Tools and we can go to Vertical Alignment. You'll see that the bulk route 1 is displayed here. And you'll also see that you've got your cover of 1.2 that we specified before we imported it from the CAD network. in the default settings. You can then do a bulk deleting of vertical points along the route. Once you have your route cleared up, you can then select your air valve sizing and choose your sizing. This is based on having the orifice big enough that during a pipe burst that you don't have a pipe collapse further down the route, so it'll allow enough air into the network when there's a pipe burst so that there isn't any cracking from collapsing pipes due to a vacuum or negative pressure. I'm going to then, once that's set up, go to your placement of the air and scour valves automatically along the route. We can then place it based on a slope and our observed distance. You can then also choose again, which we spoke about just now. You have access to those settings again, as well as the nominal size for your scour valves, and you can press OK. There it's placed on air and scour valves along the route. And we can then, without cleaning up the rest, I'm going to press save and close. And here you can see the air and scour valves are now displayed in plan view. If we go back to the display settings, you go to your air and scour valves. You can then choose the type and the diameter. So we could say to display the type and the diameter. There you can see where your air and your scour valves are. With that placed, we can now go and generate long sections along the route. I'm going to go and say plot generate. I'm going to choose the water composite long section. I'll do dynamic layouts. We're going to plot along the bulk route 1 that we set up. We'll also scroll to the next page. And we can also set up to display our air and scour valves. So we can again do the type here and the diameter. I'd just like to redefine all, yes, and quit just to clear that up. And then I will choose to auto define along this alignment from the start to the end and say yes. Now find my layouts for me along the route. I can then click next if you'd like to display your setting out information for this project. We don't have these. The air and scour valves. Here you can see it has plotted all of these for us. I think it would be best to move this one to this corner here. I see it cuts off a bit of the text over there. So what I'll do is place it on this side, and then we'll move this north side to say here. And the same for this one. So as you can see, you've got the water route along, and we also have it in plan view, as well as all the other critical information along that route. Great. I hope that helps speed up your plan production for your. Let us know if you've got any questions with us. I'm now going to have a look at the water house connections. If we go to File and I open up my project, I've chosen a project with 5,000 Irvin so that you can have a look at how quickly that this tool will automate your work for you. One common mistake is that the cadastral boundaries get loaded as an XREF. These need to be sitting in their own layer. I've called this cadastral boundaries, and then I have the earth numbers, which I've called stand numbers. With those two sitting inside my project, I'm able to then create parcels. Once the parcels are created, I can do my automatic house connections. So I'm going to go through to the survey mode, and just before I'm about to start, I just want to turn off the water display, and I'll just have one last look. I don't want any other CAD entities switched on other than these two CAD entities. I can then go to parcels and add the parcels from the stand numbers. We can then choose stand numbers, and we can do a search radius and a maximum area that it needs to cover. So anything greater than 5,000 square meters, it won't create a parcel for me. You can create a parcel, but when the properties are larger than that, you normally want to do that manually, add the house connections manually so that you can choose exactly where on the property you want to have those house connections. And then we can press OK. It'll then process those for us. It's also good to get the cadastral boundaries from the land surveyor. I sometimes found with the town planners drawings, they often have overlapping and not neatly closed up properties, so you would get double, or you'd get bleeding into the next property with when it searches for its boundaries. Okay, so we've got that set up now. So let's go ahead and switch on our water network. And then with the water network switched on, I would like to put in the property connections, but just before I'm about to do that, I just would like to go to water mode, and I'd like to just go to settings, connection defaults, and we're going to be setting up the medium CSIR. We'll be using the low income group for these properties, and then we also will be setting up the diameter of pipe that will be going into each connection. We'll have shorts and long, single and double connections. The depth below the ground for the two types of pipe. So if it's a long connection across the road, it will be 750 deep. You can increase that. And then the short connections will be 450. We can then press OK, and then once that's set up, I can go and say connections, create automatically, and again it will come up with the layer that I will be using, which is the Civdes parcel layer. It will then choose the maximum connection length of 25 meters and a tolerance of 100 mils. You can keep the existing connections if you've already done some manual ones. You can also choose the front offset. That's with the front from the street side, and then the side offset from the neighbor next door. And then the order of preference that we'll be doing is to search for the short double connections, then the long double, then the single short singles, and then the long single connections. We'll color the parcels as we go along, And we have looked at the connection defaults already, and then we can press start. It's done the double short connections, and now it's doing the double long connections as far as I know. There you can see it has done 5,116 parcels to the action. One could not be connected. There's the different lengths and type of connections that's been made. Do you want to see a list that could not be connected? I'll say yes. I'll select that one. So here you can see it is not really having any access to the roadside. We could possibly go through the property here. So I'll go and say connections, and I will graphically connect using freehand. I will choose to connect it there. It's now perpendicular to the main pipe. So I'll just press X and enter. And then when I'm happy, you can continue the pipe, but I'm just going to go right click and say end connection. And there it is, connected that property with that color code. So if you want to know what the color codes it's using, you can click on the display setting, go to your parcels, color scheme. There you can see for the water connection types, you've got your different colors for the different types of connection. You can also see here the single connections and the double house connections. That's for the short, and here is for the long. You'll also be able to go to data, and you can look at your summary. And because you've got connections now, you'll also have draw-offs from the network. If you go to analyze and you look at your connection quantities, here you can now see your single and double connections for the short and long and the totals, the number of saddles, and the diameter of those saddles needed for the different types of house connections. And then your lengths of 20, 25, and 40 mil pipe will also be summed up for you. Great, I hope that helps. Please also have a look at our sewer connections. There's not enough time today. Here we've got some automatic sewer property connection videos for you to have a look at. Something that I want to cover quickly is just fire hydrants. I know we have covered this before, and I'm not quite sure. I haven't got a lot of time at the moment. So what I'd like you to do, when you have a chance, please go over to our frequently asked page and have a look at our hydrants. You'll see that I've made a number of videos for you with regards to the hydrants. Before we start with the hydrants, it's always good to go to your settings and look at your hydrant defaults. Here's where you can set which hydrant will be used, and you can also click on here to see which categories we have. If we go for the moderate risk and press OK, that will then be used when we go to graphical draw hydrant. We can then specify where we would like the hydrant to be placed. I'd like to snap it to a node, and then you can continue. Great. I'll now have a look at the public taps, or the street taps as some refer to it. This was put into the software a while back to aid the designers for where the clients have specified that they would like to have public street taps. I'll first open up a project, and then we'll go over to the water mode, and we'll go to our settings, street tap defaults. Here you can set up numerous items such as the height of the street tap above the natural ground. We can also look at the required flow rates and the number of people that this street taps will be serving. There is a apply to all if you wish to change any of the settings and apply it to existing street types that have already been put in the model. We can press OK, and then we can go to graphical and we can choose our street types. As you can see, there is a radius that is set up. This radius has been set up to be compliant with the CSIR Red Book. When I click in the area that I would like it, it will allow me to snap to a node or split the pipe and insert a new node. So I will choose to snap to an existing node. And then we can choose the next location for the next one. And so you can see this is a much easier way of setting up the street taps, and you'll be able to see which areas that street tap will be servicing. Great, I hope that helps for when modeling your street taps. In the next section, we're going to be looking at node types. Let me go ahead and open up a project. So it's always a bit difficult to figure out which part of this I should start out with. So we'll just have a look at it in the 2D aspect and we'll show you how to build onto that. So here you can see I've got a transparent road with the sewer network. I've just switched one road on just to keep things a little bit simpler. You can see this is the 2D network. You can toggle between the 2D and the 3D. If we go over here to the display settings, we can switch the 3D on. And we can then press OK. And you can see then it is a 3D network. But our nodes haven't been set to display any 3D, so they're currently just showing a 2D manhole. If we go back to the 3D, or the 2D rather, and you'll see that even with that being 2D, if I go to my render view, it's still in a 3D mode. As you can see, it's not assigning any node types to the nodes itself or the manholes. So let's go and quit the render view. We can keep the 2D on for the plan view, that's fine for now. We can then go to our Stormwater and then go to edit node types. Okay, so unpacking node types is always a little bit tricky. I'll try and keep it as easy as possible. We've got the dimensions of your manhole, and you can choose in here whether you want it to be concrete or brick. So if we make, for instance, let's make another 2. I'll make one called brick. And we can make another one called precast concrete ring. So I'll have those two, and the precast concrete rings, we could perhaps make them round, and we would then make it concrete, that's fine, and we'll just put a slab on there. So there's different types of slab. I'm going to just work with the curb inlet ones for this project. And then we can go to the brick manholes. Those we can make square, and you also notice that there's an access or a chimney, so you can choose your chamber height. After it reaches that height, anything higher will be using this chimney. We don't have any limitations on this chimney's dimensions, but just so you can make it like, for instance, 1,000, so a meter by meter clearance. And you can see whichever is the accessibility for that chamber. We can then make it brickwork, and I'll just change this back to 800 by 800. And we can look also at auto sizing. So auto sizing brings up another menu. I'll come back to the display in a second. Here you can see different pipes coming in of different diameters. Between that envelope, it will use these dimensions, for instance. When you get a larger diameter pipe, it will always be sizing to the largest pipe coming in or going out of a manhole. So then it would then, if your pipe was 650 millimeter diameter, it would then take on these dimensions. That's when the auto sizing is switched on. You do have the ability to select all of these, copy them and paste it in Excel if you wish. You can also print out the node type report. You can send it out, so you just use a PDF writer, and let's see where we can save this. We can place it here. So here you can see I'm bringing it on the screen, and this is the report that gets written out. If we go back to display settings, you will be familiar with the display types. This is to do with 2D display settings. You can choose the type of, we've got some preloaded ones as well, and you also have the ability to make your own node types should you wish for the 2D node types. This can be done by accessing a DWG in the C drive users public documents, knowledge base software, Civil Designer 8.5 folder. You can then edit this and add your 2D symbols to it. So we can then press OK to have those two, and it will just tell us that we need to run the analysis for the final sizing and shape to take effect. I'm going to display the 3D symbols in the plan view. So we can go here, we can go and put on this 3D. There's multiple ways of converting the node types to take effect on the manholes. If you're wanting all the manholes to take on a certain type, you could set it up like we've just done in the video, in the beginning of this chapter. And then we would then decide, okay, is it to do with manholes that are already existing? If it's manholes that already exist, you would go to graphically mark all, and you would go to Tools, Set Parameters, and here you click on Manhole Types and choose the manholes that we've pre-made. I'll cancel that. Let's just clear that. If it's manholes that do not exist, and you're going to be graphically drawing them in or converting it from CAD entities, then the best would be to go to Edit, Default Settings, and you can pre-set up the manhole type here. Individually, if you want to change your manhole types, the one way would be to go to Storm Operations, Edit Data, and over here you can change your manhole type. Alternatively, you can also do this in the properties by going to your manhole type and changing it here. You can see it has changed, but it hasn't updated it fully yet. So I'm going to go to Analysis, Network. And I'm going to choose to just recalculate links and from the coordinates. It's always a bit faster to close this. I would only run the analysis right at the end once I've updated everything. Close that, and here you can see it's taken on the square shape. You can have a look at it in this view. And you can see that it hasn't taken on the orientation of the road. It also hasn't taken on the shape. So I'm just going to go through to node types again. And you can see we've got the square, we need to make it brick. And we also need to give it a inlet. So I'll press OK and OK. So now it should have the brick and the top slab. There it's got the top slab. The top slab isn't synced with the road yet, so there's it sitting there. So what we'll do is close that. So I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to say align. Click on the road. It then gives me the two possible angles that it could be to be aligned with the orientation of the road. So I'll select that one and I'll zoom in. And here you can see the manhole is protruding out and sitting with the shape of the road. It's also taking on the textures. If your textures don't show up, you can right click and go to render settings and ensure that the textures are switched on here. Another place to check for your textures in plan view, you can see here I've got the wireframe switched on in plan view, but you can go to settings, view settings, and switch on your full 3D faces, and then your textures will also show through in the plan view as well. Great, that's about all I have time for today. Thanks very much for joining us. I hope you learned a lot. Please let us know if you've got any questions. Thanks for now. Cheers. Back to you, Charles.
Thank you very much, Christopher. That was very interesting. We will shortly be posting a video copy of today's webinar on our website's webinar page. And by around midday on Monday, we will have posted the FAQ videos created from today's session on our website's FAQ library page. Once again, thank you very much for allowing the time to join us today. Please follow our company page on LinkedIn if you have not done so already, where we post our latest customers' civil designer project showcases, relevant industry news, and new civil designer tech tips. Please have a great afternoon, weekend when it arrives, and goodbye for now.